what I want to see is individuals who define success on their own terms and then pursue that success relentlessly each day. And they're not concerned about the cards that they're dealt because they know that they can control how they play their hand, just helping individuals really define what they want to get out of life and then building their life by that design that they have. If you don't put a destination in that GPS, you're just gonna be going aimlessly about life.
You know what you want early, go after it and become successful way earlier without trying to follow what everybody else tells you what you're supposed to look like at 17, 18, 19, 20, right? What you're supposed to look like is successful. The only way that you can become successful is if you have a plan. What made you decide to quit alcohol, and what role have those habits played in your mental clarity and confidence?
Single best decision that I could have made. While I wouldn't classify myself as like a heavy drinker, I would still get it in, right? When I would, whether it be the weekend or out socializing. And this is probably a cheat code for me being my best and highest self. And so I call it the 4 C's, which is, creativity, consistency, clarity, and confidence. All 4 of those were unlocked when I quit drinking. And it just started with taking a break.
What's good, everybody? It's your guy, JoJo Simmons, and welcome to the For Good podcast, where we focus on the good, never the bad, where we're measured by what we do, not what we have. Today, I'm sitting down with John Thompson III, an accomplished business leader, executive coach, and author of Stack Your Deck, How to Be an Ace in Business and Life. After 20 plus years leading teams at global companies like GE and United Technologies, generating over $1 billion in sales, John pivoted to coaching, writing, and helping people unlock their potential through the ACEs framework: attitude, connection, empowerment, and strength. Let's get into it. John, I appreciate you coming out to the For Good podcast.
Hey, great to be here with you, JoJo. Congrats on the success of the podcast as well.
Thank you so much, man. As I always started, we love speaking to all walks of life. We love speaking to the everyday person. And, as much as we love speaking to the biggest name celebrities, we like speaking to people that are really creating impact and have been creating impact over the last, 18 years or whatever you would say. So you definitely fit the mold, and you definitely are all good that we want to represent the For Good podcast. But thank you for coming on, and we'll get into it. So for those who don't know you yet, how would you introduce yourself today?
Yeah, so I'm someone, first and foremost, husband, father of 2 daughters, and so officially certified girl dad, and love every minute of that. And also, as you mentioned, executive coach, author, run a financial planning practice as well. And so I'm all about impact, man. That's me all the way around. And so live in the DC area, originally from Pittsburgh, so go Steelers, and just really all about positive energy, good energy, and helping individuals really elevate to the top of their game. That's me in a nutshell.
I love it. So you said from a young age you dreamed of being a teacher. What drew you to coaching and writing as your way of teaching now?
Yeah, Socrates said an unexamined life is one that's not worth living. And so I've always believed in, you want to make sure that you understand what's important to you, and you understand first and foremost who you are as an individual. And so I always look to put my own oxygen mask on first from that perspective. And then I think that I just always love teaching, right? Because I always feel the teacher learns the most. And so if you are coming to a point where you can understand information enough to teach others, you have no choice but to learn it yourself, right? And so for me, writing the book was very important because as I've had success over my career, I'm always about helping other individuals elevate as well. So sending the elevator back down. And so the book was just a good way to kind of plant those seeds for others and, for the next generation of leaders. So not just being a leader worth following, but how do I create other leaders? And so that we can just, again, you talk about impact, how do we amplify our impact collectively so we can all rise? So that's just, why I enjoy teaching and why I enjoy kind of leaving these seeds for others to embrace as well.
I love the two things you just said that stood out to me was about creating other leaders, not just creating followers and you being a good leader. I always say being a good leader doesn't mean that you create followers. It means you create other leaders to lead with you or lead in other spaces, right? It's about teaching
Hmm.
people how to lead in the spaces that they're comfortable in or lead in the spaces that, they want to take over, right? So I love that you
Hmm.
said that. But something that's really stood out to me just now that you said was the teacher is the one that learns the most, right? I love that because it's almost in a sense that you would think a teacher knows it all, but a teacher is probably constantly looking for knowledge to give to others, right? Can you speak on like what that means? Like the teacher learns the most. That was a very powerful statement.
Yeah, it's all about curiosity. I've got two daughters. So my oldest daughter is 15, my youngest is 11. And when I send them off to school, my oldest, it was her first day of school today. And I always share with two things when they leave for school. I tell them, be smart and ask questions. Because I
Yeah,
always feel like those that ask questions are the ones that are staying in growth mode. And so
yeah,
this idea of having a growth mindset, right? You don't feel like you've ever know enough. You're always just constantly looking to try to, gain information. And then what you do with that information and that knowledge is based on your experience and apply that knowledge. But it really starts with just having this idea of a curious mind and, really being in the question, right? And if you're in the question and if you're asking good questions, then, you're going to continue to increase your knowledge. So I always believe in stepping outside of your comfort zone and surrounding yourself with people that, are smarter than you. And then you have no choice but to learn from those individuals when you're doing that. So
yeah. I love that. Last week my daughter started school, and that was one of the main things I told her was don't be afraid to ask questions.
that's it.
Don't be afraid to be curious. Like, and my wife was like,
Hmm.
"Well, just make sure you ask it at the right time. Don't look like a teacher's pet." And I'm like, "Yeah, not like that. Not like, hey, when's the homework?" But like, make sure if you don't understand something, ask the questions because teachers love questions. Teachers
That's
love
it.
the student that wants to know. Because once you ask that question, then you have the answer, and you can grow from that. So I love that.
Yeah.
You had a
And the best
long
leader isn't the one that knows everything. The best leader is the one that asks the best questions
yeah.
and that continues to take in information. And then it's how you apply that information is what's important. But, I always want my girls to recognize the importance of asking questions because, to your point, more than likely other people in the class have those same questions. They're just not
Yeah.
confident enough to ask those
They're
questions,
not
right?
being the lead exact so they're not being the leader, right? So a lot of people, they don't take on that leader initiative because, they're like, I don't maybe they're afraid to ask or maybe they just who knows, right? But like you said, I think that probably more than half the class is thinking the same question, and
That's
you
it.
by you being a leader and asking that question can help so many others.
Without
So
a doubt.
you had a long, successful corporate career leading high performing teams. What did those experiences teach you about leadership and resilience?
So, just about leadership, it's really being someone that sets a vision for a team. And so, making sure that you are out front of the team and, constantly communicating what that vision is. I learned the importance of just setting a vision, being kind of connected to the team. It's important to be amongst the team as well. So, you're constantly understanding where the team is, where there are gaps in the team. But I really just learned the importance of creating a strategy, creating a vision for the team, then creating a strategy. And then, I would say probably equally important is being a good communicator so that you're communicating that vision so that the team knows along the way why they're doing what they're doing. And I think that is key. And then I'm a very big individual. So I'm a Gallup, you mentioned I'm a coach, I'm a Gallup certified strengths coach.
Hmm.
And what that is, it's an online assessment that you can identify your strengths. And so my top 5 strengths is I'm an achiever, learner, input, competition, and strategic. And so when you think about those themes, first and foremost, we're able, as a strategic, you're able to see around corners, right? And so you got to be strategic in nature in terms of how you're really setting the stage for your team. But then the competition in me wants to compete at a high level, and then the learner in me wants to continuously learn and continuously draw in new information. That's where input comes as well. And so believe in diversity. I believe in diversity of the team. So those are some of the themes that I feel like I've learned over the years that's important to helping a team succeed. So set the vision, build the strategy, communicate often to the team, and then continue to compete and compete at a high level.
I love that communicate and compete. Communication is huge. I've got I own. own two companies, and I know what I have learned over the years through whether it's my music production company or the media company is communication is key. It's just like a marriage, right? Communication is the only way that it can work, right? I almost feel like business, even my business partners, is like a marriage, right? Like it's like if we don't
It is.
communicate, then we can't raise this baby
Mhm.
to grow, right? So
That's
that's
right.
how I look at it. So I love how you broke that down. Now I want to talk about your book, Stack Your Deck, Rooted in the Aces Pillars. Can you walk us through what each letter stands for and why it matters?
Yeah, so I'm a simple individual. I like simple concepts. So the ACEs pillars, they came to me from a very young age when I was my grandmother's house, and my grandmother's favorite place for me to go growing up. And grandma would taught us how to play cards, and not just any cards, right? Typically grandma would teach you how to play maybe like Go Fish or concentration, right? But my grandma taught me and my younger sister how to play poker. And it wasn't just regular poker; it was like high stakes poker. Like when we would
Okay.
go to her house, she would say, "Bring your dimes," and and at the end of the night, she would have no problem going to bed with all of our dimes. And so, like, Grandma was ruthless, right? She was 4'11", but you're actually, I should say 4'11" and a half, because she claimed that half, right? But she was like larger than life, and so I learned the importance of, number one, how to compete with Grandma, and I mentioned to you earlier about competition as one of my strengths. So learn how to compete, learn how to win and lose. And obviously I didn't win a lot then because she was taking all our dimes,
You
but
knew the game
I
better.
learned the power of an ace, right?
Yeah.
And aces, for me, they still bring value. And I just remember the feeling when I was dealt an ace. Like, when you have an ace, you feel like you have an advantage. And
Yeah.
so for me, I started really thinking about, as I've charted my course to success in my corporate career, I've thought about how have I felt and how have I really brought this theme of aces into my life over the years. And so
Yeah.
I broke it down into four. I call it the aces pillars of success, which is the attitude, that's the ace of spades; connection, that's the ace of clubs; empowerment, that's the ace of hearts; and then strength, that's the ace of diamonds. And so
Mm.
together, that's the aces, right? And so if we double click there, I look at the ace of spades, which is your attitude. That's this whole idea of controlling your mindset. So I believe life is 10% what happens to us, 90% how we react. And so
Mm-hmm.
then next, the ace of clubs, that's connection. And that's all around building your network. And so I believe your network is your net worth. And so
Yes.
choosing your friends wisely, right? And so that's the connection. And then empowerment, that's the ace of hearts. And that's all about following your heart. So I always say this idea of following your heart to your true destiny in life. So that's around following your purpose. And then lastly, the ace of diamonds, that's your strength. And that's all around really taking the adversity like vitamins, allowing it to build you up and really transforming your environment. So that's what I call the aces pillars of success. And then throughout the book, I tell stories and share with others around how to embrace these themes so that you can, again, as I say, elevate to the top of your game.
I love how you broke that down, and it's funny because that story you had with your grandmother. I had some really close friends that were like cousins to me, and they had a grandfather that when I used to go stay at their house, he would say, "Bring your quarters," but it would be actually we'd be playing 21, and the
Yeah,
feeling of being dealt an ace always felt like, okay, all I need is a face card, and I got blackjack, right? So I
that's
relate
right.
in a sense, but he and him as well. Rest in peace.
Mm-hmm.
Him as well. He didn't care about taking all our quarters. He would take all of our quarters. If he could win, he'd be like, the house always
You know,
wins. If you
right?
see the house, right? So I love that story, and you're so right about being Delta Ace and understanding the value of having an ace in those games and actually being a competitor as well, right? Growing up, understanding what competition is, understanding what losing and winning is. Love that I relate to you in that aspect. Like as soon as you told that story, I was like, wow, it brought me back to when I was younger doing that with what I would call a grandfather of mine. Um,
Yeah,
what
yeah.
inspired you to fully write the book, and who did you have in mind when you were writing it?
Yeah, I think what inspired me to write the book is just always being in this space where I want to send the elevator back down
Yep.
and leave clues for individuals. I believe success leaves clues. And so you got to follow the right clues in order to be success as well. And again, to your point, creating impact. So, my goal in life or my purpose is to help others reach their purpose, inspire others to reach their purpose. And I have this lofty goal of bringing hope to millions. But I recognize bringing hope to millions starts with one individual at a time. So do for one what you wish you can do for many. And so I would say really what inspired me to write the book was the challenges and adversity that I experienced throughout my journey. How do I share those stories from a transparent place so that others can understand what maybe not to do, and in some areas to what they should do, right? And so really create a blueprint for others to follow. So not only did I write the book through my lens, but then I interviewed other aces as well that have achieved great success in their journey and how they define being an ace and how they've kind of lived their life to the fullest as well, right? And so I would say that's what inspired me. And then, as I think about who was the audience for, I really looked at it through two lenses. So number one, I looked at it as, when you're just starting out in corporate, or when you're starting out, making that college to corporate transition, you want to make a mark in the world. You don't know what you want to do, but you want to make a mark, or, again, in your words, you want to make an impact in the world. So I wanted individuals to really understand the blueprint to make their mark in the world. So I looked at those individuals, and so I share a lot of stories through college, some of the experiences that I had through college, and how I was able to elevate and create an impact there in those days. And then later in life, as a corporate executive, at that point you're looking to create more meaning in life. So, you may be at this place where you've got a family, you've got children, you're thinking about legacy, and you may even be thinking, what, I've been doing what I'm doing for the past 20 years in corporate. Am I really happy at this point? How do I define success today, right? Or how do I follow my purpose? What are the steps that I should take to follow my purpose? So those are all the tools that I put in place in the book. And so I really believe in this idea, Nelson Mandela says it, vision without action is just a dream. So the book will help you create a vision, but I also wanted to leave individuals with steps to take that they can take action on. And so that's why at the end of each chapter, I've got reflection questions that individuals can use. In addition, I've got some resources on my website where individuals can then take some practical examples from the book and then apply it to their own life. And so again, it's just all about those individuals that want to elevate to the top of their game. And if that's the case, then this book is for them.
Dope. Yeah, inspired through your own story. And speaking about your own story in the past, you've talked about burnout early in your career, that led to a 2-week psychiatric ward. How did that experience change your definition of success and well-being?
Yeah, so what I'll say, that was probably one of the most challenging stories that I had to share in my book, and I say that because being transparent and vulnerable is not easy, and when I experienced burnout at the age of 25, I was in the spot where I was in corporate, I was working full time. And I was, pursuing my master's degree. I was getting an MBA. I was leading the employee resource group. And so I had a lot of different things that I was doing at that time. And as my mother would say, she'd say, Johnny, you're doing too much, right? You're burning the candle at both ends. And sure enough, that's what happened. And so, I ended up having to take a 6-month leave of absence from work. And, and I was on some medication that the doctors had, they prescribed me with anxiety. And then what happened was the medication caused some psychotic episodes, which caused me to need to go to the psychiatric ward. And my mother still describes that time as the most difficult thing that she had to do, right? Which was, take her son and leave her son there for treatment. And, while I was there, I really started to learn to understand the importance of balance and striking the right balance, and not just, over-indexing on career. So what I talk about in the book, there's a good book by Gallup. It's called Well-Being at Work. They talk about the 5 pillars, which is your career, social, physical, financial, and community. So those are 5 pillars that I keep front and center with everything that I do. Because what I recognized at that time, while I was really hyper-focused on my career and doing that all I could from a business perspective and a community impact standpoint, I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't getting the right amount of sleep. I wasn't exercising as well as I could. I was single at the time, going to school in the part-time or full-time in the evenings, working full-time. And so, after work, you're eating chicken wings, you're, staying up late, so it wasn't a balanced life. And so now here I am, 25 plus years later, 20 years plus later, and I'm in a place where I prioritize my health and fitness. And so I recognize that I've got to be, focused on myself if I'm going to be the most and the best for my those that care about me the most and need me the most, right? And so that's really what I focus on is how do you make sure that you're, balanced and, it's okay to, chase career success, but you've also got to make sure that you're, on target from a health perspective as well.
I'm happy that you were able to find yourself through all those adversities and things. So I'm so happy that you were able to find not only yourself
Yeah.
but a better you. So that's amazing.
Well, I appreciate that, JoJo. And the way I look at it, that was a valley in my life. And I recognize, what we do in our valley determines the height of our peak. And so when I was off of work for 6 months, I really did look inward in terms of who do I want to be as a leader? Who do I want to be as an individual? And then what's required of me in order to reach that level that I know that I'm capable of. And so that was the action that I needed to take. And so it needed to happen, right? And so then once I got back to work, I mean, this was back in 2002, 6 months after I got back to work, my now wife, I mean, she reached out to me and we started dating at that time, right? And so I needed to go through that valley so that I could level set and reset so that, life would open up for me. And, and I'm thankful and grateful that it did.
Love it. And so you sound like an extremely hard worker. Like you said, you were burning at both ends of the candle. I would love to talk about what does it feel like to you to be passed over for promotions, this, despite being there 98% of the time. And how did you feel like, how did you push through that kind of feedback, like not getting those promotions?
Yeah, so that was the impetus of the strength chapter. That's how I kicked off the strength chapter, which was a time when I was passed over for promotion, and at the time my team was top team in the country, and and I interviewed for a role, and it was pretty much a foregone conclusion that this would have been the next level role for me and the right opportunity for me, and then I was met by the hiring manager that said, hey, you're 98% of the way there, but we ended up going with another candidate. And that was a gut punch. That was, one where it really does force you to take a step back because, you're defining success as, hey, getting to this next level and having a broader impact, and then being told that you were 98% of the way there. One might think like, all right, let me focus on the 2%. Let me try to find this other 2%. But then you realize, you know what? I am a whole. I am 100%. So rather than focusing on what this perceived 2% gap may be, how do I make sure that I'm bringing my whole self into the world that I know that I can do, right? And so that's what led me down the path of coaching and then writing my book and launching my coaching company. It's like I believe in, take the adversity like vitamins, let it build you up. So that was some adversity at that point. But if I didn't go through that adversity, I likely would not have gone down the route of understanding how to coach individuals and getting certified as an executive coach. I first wanted to understand what my strengths are, and I mentioned to you my strengths earlier, competition, futuristic, input, learner, achiever. Those are my strengths. So I really got honed in on my strengths. So now I know when I'm operating in my strengths, I'm bringing 100% to any organization I'm bringing, right? So honing in on my strengths, and then once I understood those, then I launched my coaching company, Team Aces, and then, wrote the book, and, now I'm on the For Good podcast. So it all comes around, JoJo.
I love that. Where some people may say you're only 90%, you're really 100% in the spaces you're supposed to be in. That's
That's
how I
it.
kind of took that story. It's like don't ever let nobody tell you that you're less than your whole full self. That may mean that you're just in the wrong room and they don't see it. Can never let nobody tell you that you're 98%. That just means that they're 98% if they don't see you 100%. So that's how
That's
I
what I'm
feel.
talking about. That's what I'm
There you
talking about, JoJo. And the other thing is also, how do you define success? And
Right.
being key on how you define success, because in my mind, I was defining success as that next level opportunity. And so then someone took that opportunity away from me. So then do I feel like a failure at that point? Well, no. If I define success as the progressive realization of a worthy ideal, then you're going to progressively grow, and you're going to focus on growth and focus on impact. and not necessarily hang success on a particular title or a particular
Yep.
position.
Here we go. That's how I look at it. Yep. So I want to talk about one of the stories in your book about you being the only black kid at your school and experiencing racism at a very young age. How did that shape your identity and your drive?
Yeah, so we mentioned our kids just starting going back to school, right? And so if let's take a step back and think about it's the first day of school, first day of kindergarten, and lunch box is packed, and you got your new school shoes all ready that you're gonna go to school, your notebook and everything, right? And so you go to school, and on the way home from school, my mother was there out front of the driveway. The school bus pulled up after school, and I'm ready to get the warm embrace from my mother. And what happened was I stepped off the school bus, and as the kids, saw me step off the bus, we heard the words, "Bye, little N-word."
Wow.
And to us at that point, it was kind of like, you do not expect to hear that, right? And so, and just for context, my father is black, my mother is white. And my parents have been married they'll be celebrating their 50th wedding anniversary in April of next year.
Congratulations.
And so, right. And so at that time, I was the only black kid, not just in the class, but in the whole school. And so, my mother, obviously warm embrace, but the next day, she was at the school making sure that that's obviously not something that, we want to see in the school. But more than anything, what my mother taught me was not to retreat to the corner, right? Not to feel less than who I am, but to recognize that while I was different than everyone, I was the special one. I was the chosen one, right? And so I was the one that need to let my light shine and bring my gifts into the world. And so I think that's really what I learned. And so as we trace back the roots of attitude, that is one, the first ACEs pillar, it's that attitude that I felt really enabled me to go into school with the confidence that I needed to then thrive in school and then build the career that I'm proud of.
Yeah. So talking about community impact and ACEs, obviously we're still kind of speaking about that. What made you I know what made you start it, but what kind of transformation are you hoping to create through it?
I'm looking to build a movement of individuals, of ACEs, that are individuals that show up as they are, show up as their authentic self, and lead big and create their legacy. And so that's really what I define as being an ACE. And, so I have a desire to, as I said, bring hope to millions, and recognizing that if I can bring hope to one individual, one ACE at a time, that's rewarding to me. And so that's really what I want to see, is individuals who define success on their own terms and then pursue that success relentlessly each day. And then each day they're being their best, they're creating impact, they're making their mark on the world, and they're not concerned about the cards that they're dealt, because they know that they can control how they play their hand. And so that's really how you stack your deck. It's not about the cards we're dealt, it's about how we play our hand. So I believe if individuals focus on the ACEs pillars of success, your attitude, connection, empowerment, strength, they can elevate to the top of their game. So that's really what I'm really focused on, excited about, and that's why I launched the ACEs platform.
I love how the analogy of playing your hand, and you've been playing your hand up for about 5 years now with alcohol free, walking 5 miles a day. What
Yes,
made
sir.
you decide to quit alcohol, and what role have those habits played in your mental clarity and confidence?
Yeah, it was. I'll say that was the single best decision that I could have made. And the reason I say that is, looking back, it was one of those areas where, when I was in sales, I was constantly, you're in sales meetings, you're in, working with clients, meeting with clients. And so, while I wouldn't classify myself as like a heavy drinker, I would still get it in, right, when I would, whether it be the weekend or out socializing. And you recognize that the next day, if you're real with yourself, that there's a little bit of a lag there, right? And so I think I decided it'll turn into about 7 years this October. And, when I took a break from drinking, it was a 1 week break. I was like, you know what, let me just take a break. And then, I remember it was a Wu-Tang Clan concert. That was the first kind of, going out without having a drink. And now I know Wu-Tang is for the children, but Wu-Tang concert, you still gonna get it in, right? And so I still remember that day. I was thinking, you know what? I'll drink cranberry juice, and what I noticed was I was still my same self. I was still my entertaining self. I was with my college buddies, and we had a good time. And so, but the next day when I woke up, I had energy. So the same energy that I had the day before, right? And so then I thought, you know what? This is probably a cheat code for me being my best and highest self. And so just that clarity that I have in the book, I kind of talk a little bit more about, I call it the 4 C's, which is, creativity, consistency, clarity, and confidence. All 4 of those were unlocked when I quit drinking. And it just started with taking a break. And, at the time when I wrote the book, it was probably about 4 years at that time. And, and I said, hey, will I ever drink again? I don't know. But here we are 7 years later, and, and it's I would not be able to create at the level that I create, whether it's my, coaching company or my financial planning practice or, the book that we're discussing here today. Those would not be in the world if it weren't for the clarity and the, like I said, consistency, creativity, and confidence that came about from me saying, hey, let's take a break here.
What's been the most rewarding part of seeing your story and your book help others grow?
I get excited like when you see a review from someone. It's like, to me, it's like opening a gift, right? Opening a present. And I recently saw one of the episodes that you did where you had some reflection about feedback that you got, and and taking the good and the bad feedback, right? Because it all helps shape you. And and I commend you for being that real and honest with individuals around, hey, bring all the feedback because I want to learn and grow. But I think what's most the best feedback you receive is just when individuals say your words inspired me, and they inspired me to make a difference. And individuals that I would not have thought. I'll give you an example. There's an individual that he's in high school, and he's a good friend of a family, good friend of mine from college, his son. And this individual, he's playing on USA hockey team, so he's like well on his way. But to hear his feedback on the book, that I know it's shaping his journey and it's helping him from a mindset perspective, even at an early age, I wouldn't have expected that, right? I thought about it in terms of, like I said, individuals right out of college or individuals that are later in life. Another example, someone that was, in their 60s. This individual's retired, and he said, you know what, this book gave me some ideas in terms of how I can be my best even in retirement. And so again, in my mind, it's for college folks, and then it's for executives, busy executives. But you really don't know who's going to take your information and who needs to hear your story at the right time. So, and like I said, it's not just my story. I shared the story of other aces as well that have experienced really great things in their life. One of the individuals we just saw in concert this past weekend. She's a Grammy-nominated musician, Wayna, and we saw her concert over the weekend. She toured with Stevie Wonder in the past, and she talked about how to define success and how to continue to operate on a high level in the midst of being amongst greatness and those kind of things. So I really get excited, JoJo, about being an inspiration and continuously leaving my mark in the world and creating an impact.
Yeah, feedback is big for me as well. Even with this podcast, as we still grow, I never know who I'm truly impacting. I think it's like people in my age range. I think it's people that like mental health talk. But then, like, I was in Florida one day. I flew out to Florida to shoot an episode, and I was walking through the airport as I landed in Miami. And this lady was behind the little fruit cart, selling stuff, and she said, "Hey, JoJo, and I thought she was gonna say, I love, the old shows you were on. She was like, I love the For Good podcast. And so does my son, and he looks up to you, and he's a teenager. And I'm like, wow, I'm impacting a teenager, somebody that looks up to me. And I don't think I'm cool. Like, obviously, I think that what I'm doing, the impact is amazing, but not to these young guys. I'm supposed to, like, not be married, not have kids, and have a bunch of women and, like, driving around in the bed with a bunch of jewelry on. And I may have, some of the jewelry and the cool lifestyle, but, like, I didn't think that I would be the representation for, like, a young guy to, like, wow, I look up to that guy. But that's the impact I want. Is I want you to know that, I am a guy you can look up to if you're younger. And the mistakes I made, I did make some of those hip hop mistakes as a young guy, right? So I want the kids to know that like I'm here to show you that like it is super cool to have a plan. That's all I'm really telling people is like have a plan in life. Like if you have a woman that you love, marry her. Or take those steps, right? If you have kids with her, right? You know, if you know what you want early, go after it and become successful way earlier without the mistakes, without the extra stuff, without trying to follow what everybody else tells you what you're supposed to look like at 17, 18, 19, 20, right? What you're supposed to look like is successful. The only way that you can become successful is if you have a plan. And that's all I really try to teach these young dudes is like, you don't got to do it like me, but have a plan. Have a plan in
That's it.
life and you'll go a long
That
way.
is it. That is it, without a
Yeah.
doubt. Yep. I love
Yeah.
that. Love that idea.
I would love to talk about how you're also a financial advisor, helping
Mhm.
people build legacy. How do you connect financial literacy with purpose and fulfillment?
It's funny when you say the importance of a plan. I feel that that is the foundation to financial literacy is just really helping individuals create their own plan. And so that's really what I'm big about, which is just helping individuals really define what they want to get out of life and then building their life by that design that they have. Otherwise, they're just going to go through life and, go the way the wind blows. So we always liken it to a GPS. If you don't put a destination in that GPS, you're just going to be going aimlessly about life. And so the better that you're able to really pinpoint where you want to go in life, then we can put the plan in place to help you get to where you want to go. And that's really what we all ultimately want. And then, I always thought about legacy is what we leave behind, but it's not as much about what we leave behind, but we can create our legacy today through taking intentional steps. And so, what we like to say is, hey, we'll help you turn the intentions you have into actions and then the actions into the results that you're looking to drive. So I would say that's what's key. Have a
I
plan
love
and then create your legacy.
I love life is like a navigation system. Set your destination and just start going, right? Like,
That's it.
set your destination and hit the road, right? No matter if there's going to be a left turn, a right turn, a detour, an accident on the way to your destination, set your destination and start going. I love
That's
that
right.
analogy.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
with everything you've already accomplished, corporate leader, author, coach, what's the next mountain that you're climbing?
I would love to at some point have a podcast, JoJo. So, I enjoy the work that you're doing. I
Oh,
enjoy listening to podcasts. I'm
thank you.
someone that's always in growth mode. And I feel like, you want to be intentional with your time at all times. And so, while I love listening to music, I also love taking in knowledge, right? And that's what you're doing. And I love celebrating the goodness in the world. And that's really why I was excited to be a part of this podcast and a part of this journey. So I see one of these days, having a podcast. I also see, more books in the future. Doing a number of corporate workshops and keynotes in the coming weeks and months. And so that's always great because it just helps you continue to touch lives and share the ACEs message. And so I think those are some of the things that I'm thinking about. And then, just being a role model for, my loved ones and, continuing to help inspire greatness in the world. So I think that's what's on the forefront for me.
I love that, and I'm not sure if you got this question asked before, but I love to ask everybody this question because I always ask myself this question: if you can go back and give your younger self one piece of advice, what would it be? Pre-psychiatric, or all of that. What would it be? What would the advice be to your younger self?
Yeah, I like this idea of life begins at the end of your comfort zone. So every night before bed, I tell my girls three things. Life begins at the end of your comfort zone. Whatever you are, be a good one and never give up. And maybe
Mm.
the last one is always remember daddy loves you. So those are the
Oh
things
yeah,
that I share with my daughter every night, or my girls every night. But most importantly, and front and center in that is life begins at the end of your comfort zone. And so I would really impress upon myself the importance of stepping outside of your comfort zone and embracing a growth mindset. And what a growth mindset does is, it recognizes the skills can be acquired. It recognizes the friends that you surround yourself with, you can learn from them. And then it recognizes failure as one of these things where I don't win or lose. I win or I learn, and I learn so I can win again. So it's just all around continuous journey, challenging yourself to be your best, and don't worry and don't concern yourself with, hey, what happens if I fall down? Because guess what? You're gonna get back up. right? And you're gonna continue to strive and thrive. So that's what I would tell myself.
Yeah, I'd probably tell myself the same thing. It's like, don't worry about failing. Fail forward. Fail
That's it.
publicly. You know,
Love
and,
that.
because people are so afraid to fail, but I think failing is I look forward to failing now, right? Like if I fail, it
Yeah,
means I'm learning, and then I know how to
that's it.
navigate how I want to, kind of how I want to go about it again.
Yeah.
And by the way, with you, the podcast you want to work on, return the favor. I'm willing to be a guest. I love the
Okay, let's go,
conversation.
JoJo.
I
All
love the
right, guest number
conversation.
one in the books.
Danica, whoever you need to get in touch with. I know
Yeah,
Danica's on here. You please get. I'd love to sit down with John Thompson III.
I
So
appreciate
to
that.
wrap it up, I always love to ask this question on my guests to end it. We're big on mental health on the For Good podcast. What do you do for your mental health, or what have you done for your mental health lately? Maybe somebody out there is paying attention and may need a regimen, may need a routine. What have you done for it
Yeah.
lately, or what do you do for your mental health?
Yeah, so thanks for that question, Jojo. So and I appreciate you normalizing this conversation because
Yeah.
it's not something that we tend to talk about, and specifically we as brothers as well need to talk more of it. And so I think just talking about it is important. I've got a good circle of brothers that we're a part of, and we continuously lift each other up and we share what's going on in our world. And so I would encourage you, number one, to share what's on your head, what's on your heart, and make sure that you've got that outlet, right? So you're not just keeping it all in. But what I do specifically is I like this idea of bookends. How you start your day and how you end your day makes the day worthwhile, right? And so starting your day, I call it starting your day with purpose. And so right out of the gate in the morning, taking some time to visualize how you want the day to unfold, really taking some time to meditate. I exercise in the morning. And so you mentioned, 5 mile a day walk. So that's generally when I get up and get out. And whether I'm listening to a podcast or I've got a morning energy playlist that I
Okay.
listen to that, again, just really
Can you give us
takes,
that morning energy playlist for this episode? Not to cut you off,
yeah,
just so I can give
yeah,
it to my fans, the consumers, the listeners. They may want to
I
hear
will
what
do
you're
that.
listening.
I will do that. Yep, absolutely. So get you the morning energy playlist. Yep. And then, it's just, again, starting day with nature, starting day with sweat, exercising a bit. So that starts the day on a high note. And then I'm very conscious in terms of what I put into my body. So, I don't eat red meat or pork, I only eat chicken, fish, turkey, drink green juice. I'm a healthy, health
Love
conscious
it.
individual. And, as I said, we had talked about no alcohol. And then how you end the day is key. And so that's where, the reflection comes in. And so, setting aside the devices. I don't even charge my phone next to my bed. It's a way because, I want to start the day with intention. I don't want to
Guilty.
lead. I don't want to lead before being led, right? But
Right,
and so, when you're being led, when you're checking your messages first thing in the morning before
right.
you can
Wow.
lead. And so, that's why it's important how you start your day, and how you end the day is just in gratitude, right? And so keep a gratitude journal, and, talk about, what were the key elements in the day? What am I grateful for? Because when you do that, it just opens up the world a bit and helps you see more things that you can be grateful for. There's a whole lot of negative. That's why I like always the positive, right? Always the positive, nothing negative, and the impact you make. So that's some of the things that I
I
do.
love that. I'm going to start implementing that as well. Like, not that I don't, but like ending my day with gratitude, maybe even getting a gratitude notebook and writing down what
Mm-hmm.
I was thankful for, even if I had some small hiccups throughout the day, but still continuing to be gracious of what were the good things, and just going through everyday life and just being able to live and being able to provide and being able to just be right. So I think that's amazing. And one thing I will say about everybody I ask about mental health, even myself, we all start the day being active, whether it's running, walking, jogging, the gym. I happen to wake up at 6:30 and go right to the gym for an hour, hour and a half, as with my day to start my day. It just makes me feel good. It mentally brings me at peace, and it just mentally makes me feel like if I can accomplish that, then I can accomplish anything else throughout the day. So I love how like everybody I talk to is like super intentional about
Yeah.
physical activity, right? Because that's all connected to your brain and how you feel. So I love that,
Yeah.
man. And I will say that love that you're an intentional person on life. I love, the journey that you've been through. I love that you want to learn, but not only learn, you want to educate and continue to learn and continue to educate. That's how the kind of same vibe of I'm on is as I
Yeah.
learn, I give, right? As I get, I give. And those are the best type of leaders. So we
That's it.
appreciate everything that you've given into the world. And continue to give to the world. Obviously, the book has been doing great, and loving the pillars of the book of Aces, Stack Your Deck.
Mhm.
I think everything that you've been doing has been a very impactful, and there's, it's a need for it in this world for people to be, impactful, intentional, and impactful is what I like to say. It's easy to be, it's easy to come out and just say anything, but when you mean it and when you're authentic and when people can feel it is when it's important. So I feel it through the
Yeah,
screen, my brother, that you're a great person.
yeah,
I feel through the screen
yeah,
that you are on a constant journey of being
mhm.
great and being positive and being good. And that's everything the For Good universe and the For Good podcast represents. So I do want to thank you once again for coming on the podcast. Everybody, it's
Yeah.
your guy, JoJo Simmons, John Thompson III. Before we get out of here, can you let us know where we can find you? Any websites, any Instagram handles, anything before I close us out?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, Jojo. And hey, look, man, this conversation it's been great for me. It's been uplifting. So you can best believe this is gonna find its way to my gratitude journal tonight at the end of the
Thank
night. So
you.
I appreciate
Likewise.
you and the work you're doing. And maybe just to close out here, one of the things that I included in the book is I write poetry, and so I write poems and included some of the poems throughout the book. And so one of the poems that I leave readers with, it's a call to action. And this poem is called Free. And so it says, all throughout the world, I've been comfortable with silence. Don't ruffle any feathers. Don't speak on the violence. We were always taught that one day will be brighter, but what if I'm the one who holds on to the lighter? It's time to spark the flame that leads to the action. Change will result, and then comes the traction. That someday is now, that someone is we. Answer the call and set the world free. And so this is about this whole idea of how do you be who you are each day, set the world free, pursue your own freedom by being yourself and being true to who you are. And so that's my message to anyone. And I would say for individuals, check me out online, Ace John Thompson. That's on Instagram, Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn as well. And, look, my book is on stackyourdeckbook.com, and then goteamaces.com is my coaching site. And it's on all levels and all platforms. So, you can get the book on, paperback, hardcover, ebook, audiobook. If you like listening, it's in my voice as well. So, you can hear me coming through the airways as well. So that's what it's all about, JoJo. So let's be free and let's continue to raise the bar, my brother.
Thank you, brother. That poem was the greatest closeout, better than any closing remarks I can give you guys. So I will say
Yes, sir.
thank you once again, John Thompson III. This is the For Good podcast where we focus on the good, never the bad, and we're measured by what we do, not what we have. It's your guy, JoJo Simmons, signing out. John Thompson III. Peace.